Hey, welcome back. Got a fun one here today. So today we're going to be trying to recreate this effect that you see here. This is super inspired by the Man vs. Machine Hypervenom 2 commercial they made a few years ago. Um, you can see that if you go to manversusmachine.com, they have it here. It's on their Behance as well. But this is one of the first things I ever saw when I was first learning 3D in like 2017. And I remember seeing this thing and being like, oh my God, I want to make cool stuff like that someday too. Well, that day is here. So we're going to learn how to recreate this sort of like tech fabric effect. It's not really a fabric. It's just sort of like these weird lines that are connected, but it kind of, the way they've linked it to this sock. It makes it look like it's fabric. It's really cool. It's sort of this abstract growth effect. I don't even really know what to call it, but I figured out a way to accomplish this in a very simple way without using really much code at all, just using mops and a bunch of lines and stuff. So I'm sure that Simon Holmdahl, the guy that created this, probably had a way more elegant way with code, and it's super cool and awesome, but I'm not that cool and awesome. I'm just going to show you how to do it the simple way that I know how to do it. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is drop down a geo. We'll call this FX. And let's put down a box, and let's make the box like pretty thin, 0.004, and then maybe like 0.015 and 0.015, something like that. And let's just zoom in on this thing. So just a word of warning, this effect can get very, very heavy very, very quickly. So I recommend that you work pretty small like this. Just so, or sorry, not 0.015, 0.15 and 0.15 like that. So I recommend you work pretty small because otherwise this can get out of hand really quickly. When I was trying to figure out how to do this effect, I crashed Houdini like a billion times because it got too heavy. So I found that if you work small, start small, get the effect figured out, and then kind of slowly increase the size if your computer can handle it to see what you can do. Okay, so then we want to put down a points from volume. Points from volume. All right, and change this to like 0.002. So that just basically creates a bunch of points from the volume. Now, you can leave it a grid, but I found the result tetrahedral gave me a little bit better results. It kind of makes these more like hexagonal honeycomb layout. It looks a little bit more like the way I want it. And then you can play with this jitter scale a little bit too, to kind of mess it up. I found out the value of 0.16 seemed to work pretty well for me. Okay. And then the next thing you want to do is let's put down a group. And we're going to call this starts. Let's just call it start. And then we can just pick a random group. We can just say 0, something like that. And we want to make this points. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we want to put this into a connect adjacent pieces. Connect adjacent pieces. And let's change this to be like a search radius of 1. And we want to change this from pieces or points to adjacent points. So let's do like 6 for now. Let's just see what that does. So basically this just connects all the points based on how many search points you have. Now I found that 2 or 3 is too low. 4 sometimes works, 4 or 5 sometimes works depending on how dense your point cloud is. But I think a value of 6 seemed to work pretty well for me. If you go too high, or like if you go like 10, there's too many long lines. It just got really heavy. So you got to find a nice balance between what your computer can handle and what looks good. Okay. The next thing we want to do is put down a find shortest path. And what you need for this is start points and end points. So for our start group, we're going to put start. And for our end points, we're going to put not start. So all the opposite ones. And then we're going to go from each start to each end. So what that does is it creates this sort of like veiny network here. Something we can do to make this look even more interesting is we can create what's called a path cost. You see this little tab that says path costs and a point cost attribute. Basically, you can set up any sort of noise attribute and put that in here, and it'll sort of work its way around that. So let me show you what I mean. So let's put down a point VOP. You could use MOPS fall offs if you want. I'm just going to do it in a point VOP here just for fun. Because they have this really nice noise called cloud noise. And actually, let's, well, I guess I don't have it yet. Let's put P in here, and then we're going to bind this out. Bind export. And we're going to call this cost. So let me just see what I'm doing here. If I hit the I and click cost, shows me what I've got. And for cloud noise, let's do like an amplitude of 10. An element size of 0.1. And it's not really giving me what I want. So I guess just try moving this offset around a little bit. You can kind of change the element size depending on the scale you're seeing. Let's do let's make it much smaller. Maybe something like that. What happens if I change the amplitude a little bit? Maybe like 7. Okay, cool. So that's my path cost, and we can turn that off, or turn off the viewer of that. But now that I have a cost attribute, if I come here and I type cost, it will rearrange them to sort of like miss those lines. So before, after. So it makes it a little more interesting. And you can come back here and you can adjust this. Maybe make the amplitude more like 10 again. Let's see what that does. 0.01, 0.1, 0.005, 0.01. I think 0.01 is fine. So it kind of breaks up the pattern a little bit. Okay, great. So we've got that. The next thing we want to do is if we hover over this, we've got almost 2 million points. Let's hit fuse. And now we've got 19,000 points. So there's a lot of like overlapping lines that you can get rid of with this fuse here. Okay. And let's put down a polypath just because. We got 13,000 polygons, 19,000 polygons. It just kind of consolidates them into a smaller amount of polygons. Great. Okay. And then let's do a group transfer. I can't remember why I did this, I think, but let's just do it anyway. And now we have our start group back here. Okay. And then what we want to do is we want to resample this. So right now, there's only like 1 point for each little angle, and I want to have a lot of points in between these. So let's put down a resample. And what you want to do is let's do a resample along by polygon edge, because if we do that, I don't want to change the shape. Why is it not doing it? 0, 0, 1. There we go. So if we don't do it by polygon edge, it'll start to like bend these a little bit. I want to keep the exact same shape, but I just want to add more points. So let's get down. Let's go like that, something like that. And I'll explain why we're doing this in a little bit. It'll make more sense. But the more resolution you can have on your curves, the nicer this is going to look. So for now, let's just leave it at that. Okay. Maybe let's just zoom out a bit. See what we got. Cool. Okay, let's put down a file cache. And we'll call this lines. Okay, and we only need a single frame. Let's just save it and then put down a time shift and delete that so that it stays at frame 1. Great, so now we have this. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to delete some stuff. So first, let's put down a group expression. And we'll call this starts, plural. And what I want to do is click this little drop down and let's do a 30% chance. And I can see that I've got primitives. I want points. That is way too many. What I want is this number to be like 0.0001. Maybe 5. Okay, so now we've got some points called starts. And what I want to do is get a blast and also a mops spread fall off. So if you don't have mops, you should download it. This what we're using here, this is part of the free mops. So if you don't have it, this is free. Just go to motionoperators.com and you can download it. I think I talk about it in every tutorial. Get it. It's awesome. Okay, so what we want to do is click on this. And I want to use a start point group called starts. And we can preview fall off. And then what this does is you can animate this. You can animate the spread. So let's do like the fall off width. I don't know. Oh, there we go. It's the spread here. So basically it's going to spread the fall off starting from those points. So it's almost like an infection solver without having to make a complicated infection solver. So it's really nice. That's pretty great. And we can add some noise to the edges of that. Let's do like that. Well, let's do like high frequency noise and let's change the amplitude to be like almost nothing. Let's see if that helps. So if we animate this, spread, and you can change the amount of max connections, and that kind of gives you different results. 10 seems to work for me. You can change the fall off so that it's like sharper or wider. But I found that 247, something like that, made it pretty good. And then let's just animate this really slowly. So let's have it start like here and just put a keyframe. And then let's go to the end of our timeline and animate it to like here. And then let's just shift click, go into the animation editor, drag these and hit linear so that it's linear. And then let's just take a look at what that looks like. So it should be moving really slowly. That's what I want. Great. Okay. And then we actually don't need this blast. I forgot. That was in a previous version. I was using it for something else, but we don't actually need it. Something else we can do, we can add another mops noise fall off. And we can plug this in. And then instead of the blend mode set, let's go overlay. And then the noise, we can do like a amplitude of like 3. Let's kind of come out here some a little more. This, maybe make the frequency really high. Is this doing anything? I don't really see. Oh, because we got to do a preview fall off. There we go. So basically what this does is it's going to roughen up the edges. So when you set something to overlay, it won't affect the parts, the areas that are just white. So if I hit this, the areas that are white already won't be affected, but these edges where there's sort of this soft fall off, you can sort of noise those up a bit like that. So this is a great way to sort of break it up and make it feel even more organic. So let's do like a value of 3. Let's go pretty high frequency like that. So now when I hit play, and I can also animate this noise. That's too fast. Let's go like 0.2. Cool. So it's going to feel more like an organic, sort of like this infection happening. Okay, great. So we've got that. And then all we need to do is put down a wrangle and we can just do an if statement. If at mops fall off is less than 0.95. So anything that's white is 1. Anything that's blue is 0. So I want to just basically select these edges, basically from the orange, the red, and the blue. That's kind of what I want. Okay, and then we do, so if mops fall off is less than 0.95, delete that little thing. And then we put down another one of these little curly brackets and we say remove point, and then 0 at ptnum, and then a little deal. Boom, there you go. And you can change this number to kind of, you can change it to be 0.92 to have a few more. You can have it be 0.99 to kind of get there, but I think I want maybe like 0.94 seems to work. So now, basically, it's deleting anything that doesn't have a value of, or anything over a value, under a value of 0.99. So now it sort of appears to grow on. So this is the reason why, if you can have more resolution in your curve, basically it's just deleting it point by point. So you can kind of see it's just sort of like popping on and off. But you basically, if you can get it to where there's more, if you have more resolution, it's going to look more like it's growing on and off instead of just sort of popping on and off. So let's come back up here. Let's see if we can add some more resolution. So 0.002, let's try 0.001, 0.0005. It's a shitload of resolution. And then again, it helps a lot to cache this. Just hit save to disk. Come back here. Probably run a little slower, but it might look a little smoother from close up. Yeah, so you can, there's still some like pops and stuff, but maybe I won't animate that noise because it's probably, let's turn that off. Yeah, that helps. So it feels like it's spreading a little bit more. Okay, cool. So we've got that. Next thing we can do is we can take this, put this in a null. We'll call this outlines base. Base, like that. All right. And then let's put a merge down and put one of them in here. And then let's take this one and put down a match size. So I want this to be a little taller. So let's kind of come here to where we have this. We can kind of see it. And let's put this here. And then let's match it to this one. So basically what I want to do is say justify y minimum to the same. So if I put this in here, it should double in height, but it doesn't because why not? Minimum to max? No. Okay. I want to justify the maximum to the minimum. So that basically takes the top part of one of them and moves it to the bottom part of the other one. So now it's double high. So cool, we've got that. All right, and then let's put down another match. Let's put down a match size here. And I want to move this so that it is justified. So the y minimum is justified to the 0. So basically it's sitting on the ground. If I hit 3 on the spacebar 3 on the keyboard, you can see it's sitting as if the 0 line is the ground. That's what I want. Okay. The next thing I'd like to do is put down a point vop. Point vop. And what we'll do here is we will go vector to float, because I want to basically pull out the y height. So put this in here. This allows me to separate the positions into 3 things. So we have now x, y, and z. And I want to manipulate the y. So let's put down a fit range here. And then let's put this into a ramp parameter here. Change this to a spline ramp. And then let's pipe this into color so we can see it. So something I should do is if I go, I'll change it to my basic thing here so I can see my geometry spreadsheet. Let's look at this and look at p.y and see what the maximum is. So it goes from basically 0 to 0.007 is the highest. So if I come in here and I fit the range from 0 to 0.007, that should do something, but it doesn't because I need to come up. And I always forget when you put down a ramp, it's just a flat ramp, so you kind of have to come in here and manually do this. So there we go. So now we have a gradient from black to white that goes along the Y height. So it's black at the 0 and white at the top. And what we can do with this is we can take the ramp and let's make this like, let's make it smooth. And let's move this here. So I just want the top to be white. And then anything below that should be black. And we're going to use this in our shader so that we can have the top part be a different color than the interior bottom part. Okay? Cool. So we've got that. Now, excellent. So right now it's working. It's doing what we want. It may not be high resolution enough. We may want to come back and adjust the how many points we have. So if we come up here, let me just turn off this saved lines thing and just see if I can do this. So if I come up to the points from volume, I'm going to try and decrease it to 0.015 and see if that does something. Sometimes, like I said, you got to be careful with this because I crashed my computer a billion times doing this. Okay, so we've got something. Find shortest path. It's working. It's working. Okay, we've got that. Okay, it is working. And then what happened with our color here? Well, let's see. Our p.y probably changed 0.005. So we come back here and change this to 0.005. That should help it. There. Okay, cool. So that's a little better, maybe a little higher resolution. Cool. And what you can do to manipulate this, you can change your shape of your lines here by, you could change this from tetrahedral to grid. You can play with the jitter scale. You can increase or decrease the point separation. You can play around with your path cost attribute to get, different lines, different effects. So if you look at the actual example from Man vs. Machine, this is like a pretty, look how close together those are. Those are really close together. But if you look at the orange ones beneath, it looks like they're a little more spaced out. It looks like only this top layer is really close together. So I found, I originally tried to make my entire box as tightly packed as this top layer here, and I just could not, I just kept crashing my computer. It was just like way too many points, way too many lines. So I found a neat little trick. We're going to leave this bottom one like this for now. And then what we're going to do is, let's just click this guy. Let's drag this and hit Option and just copy it. And we're going to make a new one that's much thinner and much tighter. So, okay, let's come over here. Let's come back to 1. So let's make this like 0.001, something like that. Maybe even smaller. Let's go 0.0005. So like really thin. Okay, and then points from volume. Let's make this like 0.01, maybe 0.0008. Let's try that. 0.0005. Let's make it really close together. And then, let's see, connect adjacent points. Got that. Find shortest path. Might take a little while because it's, so there, that's looking a little cooler, right? A little closer to this. Okay, we might even be able to go a little more. Let's try 0.0003. Let's see what that does. Hopefully it doesn't crash my computer. Come on, baby. Oh, it's thinking. I may have done it. Okay, it worked. Look at that. So I've got how many points? 419 million. Holy fucking shit. Okay, so let's hit this fuse and hopefully that takes care of some of it. Okay, so it didn't crash, but I ended up finding that, well, let me just file cache this really quick, just because it took a few minutes to get it to where I want it to be. Just make this single frame, save to disk. Oh, come on, baby. There we go. And then time shift. And okay. So I found that a value of 0.0004 instead of 0.0003 worked. And then something you have to remember is in your fuse node, you have to change the snap distance, because the default, when you go really small like that, the default is too high and it like fuses everything too much. So to keep those nice forms, I had to put an extra 0 here. Okay, cool. So I've got this. Great. And now I've got 162,000 points, whereas before I think I had like 64 million. So the fuse really helps a lot. Great. Let's come back here. And then let's just turn on our point thingy. And let's click our resample. There we go. Now how many points do I have? 1.4 million. That should be okay. Maybe I increase this a little more to like 8. Yeah. How many do I have now? 972,000. Okay, that seems manageable, I think. Okay, so we've got this, time shift, blah, blah, blah. Got our starts, got our mop spread fall off. Let's try this. So now we have this, and it's working. Okay, so maybe let's do 0.0002, do less of these. So there's, the less points you start with, the bigger your, or the more, sorry, the less points you start with, the less little dots you're going to have. So maybe like 0.3 seems to be okay. Cool. Okay, great. So now we have this outlines base. I don't need to do any of this stuff. Let's get rid of this. Oops. And let's get rid of this and this. And we'll call this outlines top. Okay, let's copy this. And we're going to come back over here to this side. And we've got our merge here. So we've got our two thingies. And let's just go object merge. Put in our top. And then let's do a match size. And I want this to be matched with this one. And I want this to go justify Y minimum to maximum. So that way it's sitting on top. Okay, let's plug this in here. So now I basically have the two bottom layers. And let me just so you can see this a little better, I'm just going to put down a color on my guy here, and we'll make this red so you can see what's happening. So you can see I've got my more tightly wound one on top as sort of this facade layer, and then below it I've got this much looser one. And I can come back and adjust these later. This one below probably is a little too loose. I probably want it to be more tight. Okay, but then I've got the match size and this. So there we go. So we've got our color, and I can change this. Cool. Okay, great. So we've got that. Now what I want to do is put down a grid, and let's just see, this is going to be way too big. Let's make it like 1 by 1, and let's hit this, but template the grid. Now where's my grid? Why can't I see it? What the hell? Weird. It's not letting me see both. It's probably the stupid Houdini viewport that I always have to reset. Yes, oh my God. That is such a stupid bug. It's constantly having to reset my Houdini viewport. Okay, so this, let's make it like a little bigger than that. Something like this. And let's give it some more resolution. Let's go like 200 by 200. Oop, not 2300, 200. Okay. And then what I'd like to do is I would want to put down a MOPS shape fall off. And let's turn this guy off. And let's do preview. And I want to change this to spherical. And let's bring the uniform scale way down. Something like that. And let's bring the inner radius down so it's much softer. Okay, Great. And then we will do a MOPS waveform. Now this one is only in MOPS Plus. So if you don't have this, I'll show you something else you can do in a minute. But for now, I highly recommend you guys get MOPS. It's just like makes fall offs and fun motion graphics effects like really easy. Somebody told me Cinema 4D takes hard things and makes them easy. No. What is it? Maybe it's the other way around. Houdini takes hard things and makes them easy, and then takes easy things and makes them hard. So Cinema 4D, all those easy things like the cloner and the bulge deformers and all of your waveforms, all the things that you would use for like motion graphics are like kind of difficult to do in Houdini. But then all the stuff that's like really hard to do, like liquids and simulations and stuff, it's really easy to do in Houdini. But with MOPS, it takes all that stuff that is normally easy in Cinema 4D and makes it easy in Houdini too. So I highly recommend you get it. So MOPS waveform, in the input output, the input attribute is going to be MOPS fall off, and the output attribute is going to be p.y. And then we also want the fall off attribute to be MOPS fall off. And then what we'll do is we'll come here, let's bring the amplitude down, and let's increase the frequency. So it essentially just makes this like ripple. And if you hit play, it just kind of automatically goes. So that's pretty cool. Maybe let's do a higher frequency, something like this. We can bring the amplitude way down. And then you can also have a frequency scale attribute here too. So you can see if I click this on, they start off wider. And actually, let's do a MOPS remap fall off. We're going to take MOPS fall off and we're going to change it to MOPS fall off 2. And we're going to change this one to MOPS fall off 2. So when I remap this, you can see what it does. Let's make this, let's go smooth. Like this maybe. And what is this one? Like that. So basically, I want them to start off really thin, and then they sort of get wider as they move towards the edge. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then this guy here, let's maybe increase the size of this so that it goes all the way out, like that. Okay, cool. And I can, with MOPS waveform, I could either just set with, if I want the time scale to be, I can make it slower by changing the time scale, or faster or slower. If I want it to go the opposite direction, I can just put a minus sign here and it goes inwards, but I want it to go outwards. And then if I don't want it to just automatically go, what I can do is I can just right click on this cycles and hit delete channel, and then I can manually keyframe this. So that way you can do stuff like go from here to, I don't know, here. And then you can kind of time remap it so that it goes like really slow and then fast. So I kind of like doing that sometimes, where you just want it to be like slow, fast. Cool. So that's just something you could do. I think I am going to do that though. Let's bring this out to like 120. And I want this to be moving really slow and then kind of speed up towards the end. Let's see. So like this, maybe even come up higher so that it's something like that. Okay. And then what else I can do is I can do a fade off here. So I want this to fade off over maybe like 150 frames. So starts off big, and then as it reaches 150, the amplitude kind of fades off into nothing. Cool. Okay, I'm liking that. I can also, something else I can do is in this MOPS shape fall off, I can add noise. So that's way too much. Let's bring the amplitude down and let's bring the frequency up. Amplitude should be like way small. Just something like, I don't know, like that. It kind of breaks it up, and we can do time varying. Let's maybe bring this time scale down. Just make it even more, bring it way down. Just make it feel a lot more organic and natural. Okay, cool. And then something else you could do is let's put down a mountain. So I found that if you put this after the MOPS waveform, it gets all shitty. But if you put it before the MOPS waveform respects the mountain. So this is the little trick. If you guys don't have MOPS Plus, you can just skip this part. You can just use the mountain if you want. Or you can, any way that you want to deform this grid to be kind of organic looking, you can do that. So let's come into the fractal. Let's bring the roughness way down. Let's bring the element size way down. And the amplitude also way down. Let's bring this element size like way down, like this. Amplitude way down. And then let's do the animation. Let's click that. Let's see how, I think we want this to be higher, like that. Let's get in close and just see what that's going to look like. Cool. It's looking cool. Okay, and we can adjust this later. But great, so we've got this. Why are we making this? Well, what we want to do is we want to take our points and we want to deform them to this. So let's scrub ahead. I don't know if you can hear that, but there are like 1,000 people yelling in my hallway. I have no idea why. Okay, but let's put down a point deform. And let's, the points we want to deform are this one. And then the deformed point lattice is this. And the rest point lattice would be this. Okay, and let's see what that does. I might need to adjust some things. There we go. Look at that. Deforms perfectly. So something I want to do, let's change this a little bit. Let's make the minimum points 10 and the maximum radius 0.13. I think that helped a little bit in mine. I don't really see a difference in this one. Something else that I want to do is put down a transform, not a MOPS trails, a transform. And let's look at this and let's template this, and bring this up. So I want this to be sort of here. And that helps it. I think it helps a little bit. I don't want these. Damn it, come on. It's not really doing anything, is it? There we go. So you need to have the same transform on both. So I found that if I raise the level of this grid just a little bit so that it's closer to the top of these points, then I sort of get rid of those like bulging. So this is, let me show you. Get rid of this here. Before, see how these are like very rounded and then there's these like tight creases in here? I don't really want that. I want this to feel a lot more flowy. But then when I moved the level up, boom, there we go. Now it's a lot more like really a gentle curve. That's what I want. So we've got our point deform. So basically what I would do if I were you is I would set up a camera now. So set up camera, if I can spell. And we're going to kind of get in tight on this thing. And damn it, I always forget to push this lock. So get in like here, just kind of position it. And I would do all of your camera animation and when you're looking at this, because it's a lot lighter to look at, you can move around a lot faster. Maybe getting a little closer like this. Okay, and then let's just hit a keyframe here, go to frame 120 and kind of just zoom out and just kind of move it so that it's like that. Hit these, go in, hit H on the keyboard, make them linear. Something like this. So I may even want to slow down. So I'm noticing that at the edges here, I'm starting to see some, I don't really want to see the sky there. I want to make sure that this is kind of covered. So maybe kind of come to this frame, kind of come in a little, something like that. And just keyframe, I don't know. Maybe that'll look wonky, maybe not. Anyway, we can adjust it later, but for now, I just kind of wanted to show you that's how you get there. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to copy this camera and I want to come to this pointer form and I want to, let's uncheck this, put down a volume and we're going to go from camera. We're going to paste our camera that we just copied. All right. And then I want to set this initial value to be like 1 point, just, I don't know, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then let's change the Z. Let's come out of here so we can actually see what we're doing. We're making a volume, basically, based on our camera's frustum. So bring this near to be 0. The far can be 5. We can increase the sampling divisions, something like that, make it a little better. All right. And then what we're going to do is group this and this. And we're going to call this delete. God dang it. Delete, like that. Okay. And we want to go points. And we want to go keep in bounding regions. And we're going to go bounding volume. And we'll need to make our ISO surface something. Just can't be 0. And let's hit invert, or like this. Either one. You can invert it or not invert it. Okay, but then you put down a delete and go points, and we'll go delete our delete group. There we go. So now when we look through our camera, well, it's still kind of seeing the edges there. That's weird. Well, that's because our points don't go to the edge of the grid. Our box isn't big enough. But basically, I'm trying to show you how you can sort of cull and delete the stuff that's not in your frame to save a lot of memory, because this is a very memory intensive thing sometimes. So if I hover over this, I've got 1.7 million points, but if I hover over the delete, I've got 880,000. So I've deleted like basically 1 million points, which is really, really great. So even when the camera is moving, it will still kind of dynamically delete anything that's not in frame. Okay, so let's skip ahead to like this frame here, maybe this frame here. And let's put down a null. Call this out. Okay, great. And then let's come up. And then what I want to do is put down, well, for now, let's go into Redshift object. We'll go to strands, and we're going to go render object as strands and change this to capsas. And then we're going to change this to like 0.03, something like that. Okay? And let's put down a RS light. And if you look at the example from these guys, you can tell that there's like a really harsh directional light casting shadows. So I'm probably going to use a spotlight. So let's go in here, change this to spot. And then I want to put down a null. We're going to call this target. And let's, come on. Make the null target like, yeah, probably there is actually fine. Right in the center is probably pretty good. And then this guy, we'll go to transform, go to look at options, and we'll put target in there. So it always helps to have a target with the spotlight, because then when you move it around, it just sort of automatically points where you've pointed it. Great. Okay, so let's just fire up the render viewer and see what we get, and hopefully it doesn't crash. Okay, so here we are. We've got this. It looks like shit, but it is working. So first thing let's do in our camera is go to Redshift Camera Optical and change this to filmic. We can decrease the exposure a bit. so we can actually see what the hell we're doing. Now, I think these lines are way too thick, right? That's the first thing I noticed. So let's turn this off, come to the FX, change this down to like 0.15. Let's make it half that size. These need to look really delicate. Okay, cool. And I think the intensity of my spotlight is probably too much. Let's bring it down to like 10. That's feeling better. Okay. It's starting to look more like it. Cool. But I think even these are probably still too thick. So let's bring this down to like 0.008. Let's try that. Feeling a little better, maybe 0.01. Let's try that. Cool. It's feeling better. So something I noticed is the top layer looks good, but I think that the layer underneath is probably too loose. So we'll probably need to go back and adjust the point density on our points from volume. But for now, I want to show you how to shade this. So let's go set a quick mark here. Go to material, set a quick mark 2, and just put down RS material builder. And we're going to call this lines. And what I want to do in here is I want to bring in my point attributes. And the attribute I have is CD. And let's just plug that into the base color. Or actually, let's plug this into a mix material, color mix. And this will be the amount. And let's just for now, needs to go to mix amount. So we'll have one be white and the other one be orange for now. And let's just put this material on our lines like that, and then fire this back up again so we can see what we're doing. There you go. It's working. I need to switch my colors, but it's working. So I want the bottom one to be this sort of grayish material, and then the top one to be this kind of orangey material. And we can make this kind of darker or more red. Cool. So let's look at the example. Oh, shit. Come on. So you can see we're getting kind of close, starting to look pretty good. All right. Something I'm going to want to do here is let's maybe put some subsurface scattering on this. So we'll go to, or maybe make some metalness a little, maybe make it a little shinier. Yeah, give it some shine, make them kind of rough. And then let's do, where is it? Subsurface. Put this at like 0.4, something like that. And then let's take the same color and we'll plug it into the MS, not the MS amount, the MS color slot, and bring the scale way down, probably like 0.003, 0003. 0001, 00003. There we go. Something like that. So it makes it feel a little more plasticky. Cool. Okay, something else is I'm going to want some volume fog on this, and we're going to want some heavy depth of field. So what I'll do is I will go to my out. We'll set a quick mark here, number 3. And we're going to go into Redshift, Advanced, Volume Scattering, Enable. Okay, and now we've got volume. It's not super apparent, but we've got it. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the scattering a little bit to be more, and the anisotropy maybe like 0.4. Okay, so let's change the scattering. If I move the scattering up, you can see it's working. So maybe something more like this. Basically, what I'm trying to do is recreate. If you notice that the shadows here, they're not perfectly black. It's like there's some volume fog in here. Now you could do this in post. You could just raise the black levels, but I kind of just wanted to do it here with this. So let's just scattering something like that. And let's adjust our light. Maybe let's come in here under spot. Let's change the cone angle to be like thinner so that not everything is in the light. And let's bring the fall off curve up, the fall off angle up, and then something like that I think is kind of nice. Maybe let's increase the intensity a bit. Okay, and then let's do our DOF here on the camera. Let's go to under optical, turn on enable legacy DOF and turn on bokeh. And then click this guy and click to make your focus point. There we go. God, why are you not focusing? And then, oh, we have to turn off enable Houdini focus and stop. There we go. So click. You gotta get right on one of these lines or else it's not gonna work. There we go. Okay, that seems pretty good. Maybe let's bring the aperture down to 4, and then we'll have to adjust the exposure to kind of compensate for that. So you can see we're starting to get somewhere. Starting to look a lot more like the example. Bring the exposure up a bit. Maybe let's bring the exposure up. And then something I like to do is go to color correction and turn on tone mapping so that it kind of gets those blown out highlights under control. And then we can increase the exposure even more to make it brighter without blowing out the highlights. Cool, so that's starting to look like something. So I think at this point, what I would do is I'd probably, you know, we basically have the effect. It's animated, it's ready to go. You can just render it if you want, but I think I want to try maybe making the inner mesh, the underlayer a little tighter. So let's just pause this. Let's come back in. And again, you know, it kind of depends on what your computer can handle, but let's go to the points from volume and let's just bring this down to 1. And this will take a minute. Just going to go through the motions, blah, blah, blah. It's going to, you can see it's fusing, so you might just have to wait a second. I'll pause this. So it worked, but again, you remember, you have to come in here and I had to change the fuse distance to be smaller. I had to add another 0 because otherwise it fuses too many of them and you kind of lose those nice shapes. So something to keep in mind is as you increase or decrease this points from volume, you'll probably need to increase or decrease this fuse snap distance to sort of keep your nice shapes that you're creating. So let's see what this looks like if we come back down to here. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. So let's look at this here. I'm going to take a snapshot and let's fire this up again and see what that looks like as in a comparison. I might need to adjust my focus point here. So that's looking a lot better, I think. Come on, there we go. So let's, I think that's probably way too much DOF now, but it's looking a lot closer to the example, right? So let's maybe bring the aperture up to 6. Bring the exposure back up to compensate for that. It's looking pretty cool. I'm liking it. So I like this. I mean, I think it's looking a lot like the example. Let's take a screenshot and let's look here. So if you look side by side, so this one, it looks maybe a little bit more organic and bent. These are kind of like very straight. So something you can do, you can, to play with the shapes a little bit more to kind of in your, to make these a little bit less like regular and angular, you can put down like a subdivide or a smooth. So let's come in here, let's go like smooth. And so let's do like, is that doing anything at all? This is before, after. So, okay, maybe the smooth isn't what you want to do. Maybe in the resample up here, maybe you do subdivision curves. There we go. So you got a different look. Now they're a little more like loose and wavy than if you use straight curves. So there's different things you can do to affect the look of your sort of like vein structure. So you can, you know, make subdivision curves. You can add more noise into your point cost attributes. You can increase or decrease your points from volume. You can change this to from tetrahedral to grid. That'll give you a different look. You can also change the jitter scale a little more to make it a little bit less regular. So there's a lot you can do to affect that. But basically, that is the basis of the effect. So you just kind of set up your camera, you hit render, set up a different camera from a different angle, hit render, play around with the noise, the MOPS thing. Something else that's an interesting thing that you could play with. I'm not going to do it here just because it'll take a little more time than I want to, but it's also very simple. So I was watching sort of a general breakdown of how Simon Holmdahl actually did this effect. And instead of using a grid with MOPS waveforms, he took this grid and he put it into Vellum and made sort of this like wavy basic Vellum simulation where you just put like a pop force in there and kind of make it wave. And then he did the point deform. So you can get an even more organic look by doing something like that. So that is basically it. I hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.